Welcome to Who Made This Mess? Raising Children and Reparenting Ourselves. Here we discuss the joys and challenges of parenting while trying to develop our own self-awareness and self-compassion. Raising children can be messy and so hard, but we believe that as we learn to embrace our own messiness and imperfection, we can learn to show up for our kids and raise a gentler generation.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Angie.
I'm Shauna.
And we're so glad to have you here today. We have a really great topic to talk about today, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about empathy.
Yes, I'm excited about this topic because it's something that I think is around us every day, but to take the time really to dive into why empathy is important and how to teach that to our kids is a really great thing to actually think on and be intentional about.
Absolutely. I think that when it comes to having empathy, it's something we need as parents, and it's something that we want our kids to have, right? To have those good relationships with other people.
Yeah. It's part of being a good human.
I think so.
Yeah. When we said about doing this topic, I asked Jasmine, my 10-year-old daughter, and I said, Jasmine, what do you think empathy is? And I was not sure what kind of answers I was going to get because we had never discussed that. I've seen her show it, but I was like, okay, well, does she actually know what this means? Does she know that this is empathy, or what was she going to say? So she actually did say right away, she said, well, I just think about comforting someone. And she said one thing that I liked that she said was, it's like when someone needs you the most and you're there for them, you help them. And I thought that was really good. I was like, okay, great, good job.
Yeah.
You gave good answers there.
Well, she's a great kid and you're a great mom, so I'm not surprised that she gave a good answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so much of what empathy looks like. And when we think about what is empathy, what is the definition of empathy, there's the emotional empathy, and then there's kind of this idea of cognitive empathy. So emotional empathy is just being able to share the feelings of someone else. So they're telling you how they feel, or you're imagining how they feel, and you can feel that feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So really, it is a physiological experience to have empathy, an emotional empathy. So our brain is kind of lighting up in the same areas that person's brain is lighting up in. That's a lot of how we're wired. We have something called mirror neurons.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay.
so
That's interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah. So it's a part of our brain that lights up, that has activity when we see somebody else experiencing something. So I can watch you do something and my brain is going to light up in some of those same areas. It mirrors in my brain what I'm seeing you do.
Yeah.
It's really cool actually that our brains are capable of that. And so I think that's a lot of what emotional empathy is kind of, I hear you, I see you, I'm witnessing you experience something, and I can feel that in my body. I can imagine what that's like for you.
Yeah.
In my own feelings.
Yeah, totality of understanding.
And then there's also cognitive empathy, right? So the empathy that is the ability to think about what someone else might be thinking or feeling, right? So this is also kind of called theory of mind.
Okay.
Developing the ability to think about what somebody else is experiencing being different than you.
Okay.
It's more of a thought process, a cognitive process, rather than just a natural, just evoking it out of you emotionally.
Okay, that's really interesting. But I really get that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because we do both of those things, right? Sometimes we just feel what somebody else is feeling, and sometimes we have to kind of stop and think about what somebody else might be feeling. And this develops differently over time.
Okay.
So for kids, they are born with the ability to have emotional empathy in the form of contagion crying. So this is like the newborn baby is in the nursery and one of the babies start crying, and so the other baby starts crying, right? Like their brains are kind of firing in that, like, oh, I don't know what's going on cognitively. They don't have a thought process of like, oh, that baby is sad. Oh, that makes me sad that this baby is feeling sad. No. But they
just happens.
It just happens. It just happens. And I think we sometimes think that small children and infants don't have an emotional awareness, right? Like, you're so young, they won't know if I'm upset or in a bad mood. And that's actually not true, right? They can pick up on those physiological signs that we're having. They might not be able to make sense of it. They might not be able to say, oh, mommy is really upset because she just broke the plate, right? Like, no, they just can sense something's not right. My mom is upset. I feel uncomfortable in my body because my mom is upset.
Yeah, wow, it brings to my memory just trying to nurse my newborn and how I had to be relaxed, and if I wasn't, it was like it didn't work. We had to come back, circle around and come back, whenever we were both calm. So that's interesting, and I believe that.
I think also it's the same thing of like, as a parent, you have to be calm in order to calm your child, right? Like, to regulate them, we have to be regulated, or else it really doesn't work. And so, there's that connection, right? That human connection that happens because of empathy,
right?
And through empathy.
I think back to, at the time when my kids were really, really young, and so they were nonverbal still, but they still knew to go to another child if they had a boo-boo or were crying. Or, Jasmine was not even a year yet when I had, she had just turned one. She just turned one. And whenever I had Ethan, and, when he would cry, she would just go right to him. She would try to find the binky, and she was like, she didn't have words yet, really didn't have words, a few maybe, but the fact that she knew what to do, and she would, go like rub him and stuff, it's amazing what they do pick up so quickly. And I was talking to my husband about empathy, and he feels the same way I do. A lot of empathy in our household is taught by them watching us model empathy with each other, and it's caught more than taught in our house, at least when it comes to empathy. But
I think that's everywhere, right? So we do have different temperaments and different kind of biological makeups when it comes to our ability to have empathy. So some people, it comes much more naturally than it does to other people. So there's kind of that nature part of it. But nurture part of it is huge, right? And so the ability to have empathy, I think, is really based on how much empathy is nurtured in you, and that is formed by the care you receive. Right? Like, are you receiving sensitive care? Are you having caregivers that are attuned to you, caregivers that are caring about what you're feeling? And so, it's both of those things. And I think it is caught, it's modeled for kids, and that's how they learn to show it.
Yeah. I think that just kind of what is it called? Like self-observing, self-reflection. There are people and places where I think I can easily show more empathy. And then other times, maybe if it may have to do with whether I have a strong relationship with you or not, but there are times where I may walk from a situation where someone shared something with me, and I'm like, well, did I really show that I cared enough? Or, because I didn't relate, again, like the cognitive part, did I not step into the cognitive thinking of being empathetic because again, like there are situations that I don't understand, and I think that's something that I could definitely work on. When I don't understand, still showing empathy.
I think there are different ways for us to show more empathy and things that get in the way of showing empathy, right? So like when we are stressed, when we are dysregulated, it is hard for us to access the parts of our brain that relate to empathy, right? That show empathy, because we might be in survival mode, and survival mode is all about self-protection, right? So it doesn't really serve you when you are trying to survive, to necessarily be slowing down to put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah, I think that comes into play even just with our own kids, because there's times that they might come to us with something and I might think that's not a big deal. Like, you don't have bills to worry about. Why are you worried about this small matter? You know, and then I really lack in empathy. And I might not, it may be that I'm in a good mood or a bad mood that day, but yeah, just kind of really still not making them feel like, well, your problem's not as big as mine, so
yeah, it takes slowing down, right? Like kind of like slowing down to actually connect in those moments when maybe other things are on our mind or other things are distracting us from being able to have empathy. I think it's also hard when we don't have shared experiences, right? So it's easier to relate and imagine someone going through something you have been through.
Right.
But I think it's also important to have empathy for people that are different than us and people who, you know, might be going through something we've never been through before. So like building that in ourselves, you know, that might be our kids, that might be strangers, that might be people who look differently than we do, right? And so I think all of that is so important.
Yeah, and it comes into play like regularly. I think that if we really sit back and think on it, empathy comes into like each day, every day somewhere. So but I think it is really great that you talked about taking the time, because we're so busy, and I think that taking the time is really a great way to show empathy, taking the time to listen to someone, taking the time and not just passing it off, even just saying like, well, let me know, keep me updated, you know, but they're updating you. It may be updating you right now. You know, take the time to listen to what's going on, and not just brushing it off. Because sometimes that can happen in our busy lives. We don't take the time, and listening. I think really. You know, I know for me, if I'm talking to someone, I know I come to you about different things, and it just really makes a difference to know that somebody's really paying attention and taking the time to listen through, you know, the thoughts. And it
helps us a lot to process our feelings and to lessen kind of the intensity of our feelings when we feel like someone else has empathy,
right,
you know, and acknowledges those feelings rather than dismissing us or pushing us away.
Yeah, I've had to work on that again. Like with my daughter, she's 10 years old, and she's like in the tween years, the preteen, and so it's really different dealing with a child at that age, and my son as well. She's just more verbal about things, and we have good conversations, but at her age, she's coming to me with things going on that might be going on in the school day that I honestly do not understand. It's different. Their time in school looks very different than what it did for us. And so I had to, even just a couple weeks ago and probably even last week as well, there's just been times where she's talking to me about things going on and how it's making her feel, and I've done well sometimes, and I've done really poorly at times, and caught myself and tried to shift, because there will be times where I'll say, oh, I understand, or I get it, you know, and I really don't, and my actions show that I don't. And you can tell because her whole demeanor changes. Like, she'll kind of sigh, she'll say, never mind, you know, and then I just feel really awful, because it's like, okay, when you're shaking and sighing, never mind, you're showing I don't get it, and I didn't show you what you needed in this moment. And what I really have tried to work on is being honest that I don't understand, and then asking, like, help me understand. Or if I still really don't understand, kind of working on the emotion she's feeling from a situation I don't understand, and kind of work on that. Well, how did that make you feel? Oh, I understand that feeling.
Yes.
It may not have come from something that was something I've ever experienced, but I can definitely understand this emotion you're having. What can I do to help? And taking the time to really just talk it through and discuss it with her, show her that I'm there, rather than, oh, I understand, I'm so sorry that happened, but then, like, keep on doing whatever I'm doing,
Yeah, it's more than just the words,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it is.
Like the presence and the body language and all of that.
Yeah, and sometimes I have noticed it's a sweet moment, but I'm always, like, sad that she needs it at that time. But she'll come home from school and I'll ask how her day was, and she just says, like, the usual. Or she'll say, there's days where it's great, the day was fine, and then other days, she's just like, I just need a hug. And so we won't really say anything, but I'll just give her a big scoop hug, and then she'll go on about her day. And I love that I can do that. I love that she trusts me to tell me that she just needs a hug, because we that took time. You asked me a couple years ago. We weren't there, and we weren't in what I thought was, like, a really bad place. But I really think that had I not put intentional thinking and really trying to shift parenting with her, I wouldn't have gotten, a couple weeks ago, Mom, I need a hug. So
I have to tell
I'm proud
you
of that.
Yeah, well, you are doing amazing, and I'm really proud of you too. And yeah, just to hear, like, the awareness that you have and the ability to be receptive to that. But you make me think about this book that my daughter has. I got her this book. I heard about it from somebody else who recommended it, and it's called The Rabbit Listens.
Okay. I've never heard of that.
I can't remember the author right now, Cori Doerrfeld or something. I can look that up, but it's The Rabbit Listens, and there's this little child, Taylor, and they're building this tower of blocks, and the blocks get knocked down. And it's all of these different animals coming to Taylor to try to help her, right? So there's, like, the chicken, and the chicken wants to talk about it, but Taylor doesn't feel like talking. And the bear, and he wants to yell about it, and Taylor doesn't feel like yelling. And, like, all of these different animals are coming to, like, try to fix it.
Yeah.
And then the rabbit comes and just sits next to Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just there beside Taylor.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like the rabbit listens.
Oh.
And somehow just being there, sitting with Taylor in those emotions makes it better.
Yeah.
And then Taylor goes through all the steps of, like, trying different things, and in the end builds something new, right? And so it's like the rabbit listens, right? Like, sometimes we just need to listen, to be there, to witness it. And that is a way to show empathy. We don't have to fix the feeling. We don't have to fix the situation. Right.
And that's hard for people that are fixers. I've said many times, since I've learned it, to know why someone's approaching you. Are they approaching you to share, to just have a listener, or are they approaching you to help with a solution? And if you really can gather which one they're there for, it helps so much. Then you really can, like, properly help the person. Yeah. Oh, I love that book. I'll have to look that up.
I'll have to share it with you for sure. It's really great. And I think, we think about how empathy develops for kids. I think books, it can be a really great tool to help kids grow empathy, to kind of show them some examples of empathy. Also, while you're reading, to kind of maybe reflect on what the characters are feeling, right? Kind of do some of that reflecting with them. I talked about the infants who have this contagion crying and have kind of these physiological responses to others' emotions. Empathy develops and looks different in those early childhood years. So between like 18 to 24 months, that's when kids start to really understand that they are separate from other people. So they have this concept now at 18 to 24 months that like, I am me and you are you, and we are not the same person, right? And that's actually when we start to see that emotional empathy leading to more pro-social behaviors. So those toddlers, right? You were talking about Jasmine, and she was so young. And that's so sweet. She was showing those pro-social behaviors, like, let me comfort you, let me get you what you need, right?
She was a little harsh sometimes. Like, here's the pacifier.
Yes, because she's
Here's the bottle. Where's the bottle?
Yeah. Oh, that's just so sweet. But that 18 to 24 month range is when they can start to understand, like, oh, you are feeling an emotion. I kind of know what that feels like, and so I want to do something to help you. She's 2, and she'll go, "You okay? You okay?" Right? Or she'll come over and she'll reach out. I don't know. I could brag on her all day because she's also so sweet. She's a really sweet little girl, and she likes to be kind to other kids or be kind to adults, and it's really sweet, right? It really warms your heart to see it as a parent. Those pro-social behaviors that start to come out.
It's like she's picking it up from you and Lee.
I hope so. I think we're trying really hard to show that to her, and I think some of that too is just like her temperament, her natural abilities as well. But I think it's really rewarding as a parent to see your child embody some of those characteristics that you're trying to instill in them and guide them towards, without you having to prompt it all the time, right?
Right, exactly. I had I guess a question for you. One thing that I thought of was, with empathy, you also want to teach boundaries with it, but one, because you want to teach that you want to show this person that you care, but you also don't want to take on something that's not for you to take on. But when I think of boundaries as well, I'm also wondering, how do you show empathy and teach empathy, but without going too far? And I'm trying to think of how to word this, but for example, the fixer. If you're trying to show empathy, but also needing that person to learn how to work through their emotions on their own rather than you going in and fixing it for them, because I think that for my son, he knows he can come to me with a problem and I'll fix it. And he doesn't he won't fix it on his own. And I have to understand, no, you need to do this or this, And I know it's situational, and not every situation is a moment like that, but I don't know. Do you have any advice, or just where's that? How do you teach that as well without always making it okay? They have to learn how to work through, because then do they run the risk of becoming too dependent on others to fix things?
Yeah, I think, and too, if you have so much empathy that you're always feeling for other people, and you're feeling mostly just taking on everyone's sadness and pain, then you're gonna be depressed, right?
Always the listener.
That's a lot. And so you do have to have boundaries around it, and kind of realizing that you are that separate person, right?
So
sitting with the emotion for me, it's a lot of like cognitive reminders of like, okay, this is, I'm here to care for this person here. And then I'm back to focusing on what I need as well.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so having that balance, I think it's trickier to teach boundaries to kids around that, especially young kids who might not have the cognitive abilities to understand that and implement that. It's learning to tolerate feelings. And so maybe that is part of it, is like, by teaching kids that feelings are okay, by us acknowledging their feelings and us having boundaries around empathy and not going into fixer mode all the time, they can then learn what it's like to just acknowledge and sit with someone's feelings. Rather than like, oh, you're feeling sad. I feel uncomfortable that you're sad, and so I need to fix it. It's like, oh, you're feeling sad. Oh, I can imagine what sadness feels like. Yeah, that makes sense to me, that you'd be feeling sad.
Yeah, or even like talking them through the solution. Like, I don't need to give them, if I know the solution, perhaps. If I don't just do what the solution is for them, but talk them through, well, what do you think we can do from here, and make them start turning their wheels of thinking of, well, what can I do in this situation? I think that could be really helpful. It just came to me too. Just kind of talking them through it so that they're doing the thinking. Might help, but
and I think that looks different at different ages, right? So like around 4 years old is when kids start to develop this idea of really like more cognitive empathy, being able to think about what somebody else is feeling and to imagine what their beliefs might be about something, or their attitudes might be about something. And so at that age, you can start to walk them through that problem solving a little bit more of like, if it's a social situation and their friend is sad, right? Like, or maybe it's like you're trying to teach them empathy. They made their friend sad, right? Like, and how to talk them through that, right? Like, you took that toy away from Billy, right? Like, I see his face is kind of turned down. His mouth is turned down, and his eyes are a little watery. What do you think he's feeling right now? Right? And so just making those connections, I think you have to be really careful to not include shame in that. Like, oh, look, you made Billy sad, right? Like, what are you going to do about that, right? But, I think sometimes you can prompt it like, oh, Billy seems kind of sad right now. Can you offer him another toy? Like, what can we do here to, be fair in the situation? But I also think that it's okay to recognize the emotions without like forcing a kid to apologize or like making them do something
and work through that. Themselves. But because forcing the apologies, it doesn't work if they don't understand why, even as grown-ups, as my kids, their age and stuff, it's just like, don't, I'm trying to tell them now, well, don't say you're sorry when you're not sorry. We
want it to be authentic. We do want it to be filled with empathy, right? So I think those boundaries are important. Being able to nurture the empathy in kids and also model boundaries. So being a responsive parent, responding to their emotions, tolerating their emotions, accepting their emotions, labeling their emotions, right? Helping them to identify their emotions will also help them to identify others' emotions, right? Building that emotional vocabulary.
And I think even just like healthy, again, like this could go with boundaries, but just helping them develop like understanding about a healthy time frame to be dealing with something, I guess. If you're dealing with something like grief, grief is something that would be a long process. And if you're dealing with something that may not be as heavy as that, but just kind of like something that a child might be going through, should it last for a week every single day, or is this something that we can come to resolve, to move past, and that just kind of a healthy boundary in that way. This is my own belief as a believer. This may not be others way of thinking, but as a believer, we're taught to cast our cares to God and cast our cares to the Lord. And so that is what my advice would be to others and how I'm bringing up my own children. And it definitely has helped me. But even if that's not your belief, I think there is healthy time frame to kind of keep something, because then you do fall into the depression and the just bringing it on and it really taking over you.
Yeah. I think it is important to be able to have that like awareness of how something is affecting us, and when we might need to be doing something different because of that, right? Like if we are feeling consumed by something that isn't really ours to carry.
Yes.
Right. And I think those are like good signs. If you're feeling preoccupied with somebody else's emotions, like that's a good time to kind of pause and say, like, I need to do some self-care. I need to do some self-assessment here.
Yeah.
I need to take some time to really reflect for myself what I need, because you're probably not taking the time for yourself and care for yourself. I mean, that's really important in the helping profession, right? To be able to have those boundaries, right? I have clients who've gone through really difficult things. And if I'm spending all my free time, like thinking about what they have been through, like that's not healthy for me. And it's not going to help me show up better for other people.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like I have to be able to like kind of compartmentalize in a way, like or maybe not compartmentalize, we call it like the container, right? Like sometimes you have to put those things in a container. So being really present with people in the moment,
right,
but then being able to kind of put those things off to the side when you're going through your day to day. And I think like that applies as a therapist, but I think that also applies to like different kinds of relationships that we have.
Yes.
It's going to look different depending on our closeness and our quality of relationship, right? Like things that are going on with my daughter, I'm probably going to think about those a lot more than, things that might be going on with an acquaintance, right? Like, and if I realize the things that are going on with an acquaintance, like if I read somebody's Facebook post and now I'm like dwelling on it and really like, that's a good sign.
That can happen a lot. It's
like,
very popular.
Yeah. Cause there are so many really sad and painful things that people are going through every day. And those are valid things, but those are not always our things to carry.
Yeah.
So you can be present and then you can, with that person, and then you can move on into the next focus of your emotional energy.
Yep.
Well, I think this is such an important topic, and I'm glad we took some time to kind of talk about it together and make some time for reflecting on it. And we really hope that this is something that is helpful in your journey as a parent, or maybe just even as a human, thinking about how you're experiencing empathy, how you're showing empathy, how you're having boundaries around empathy, and then how you're fostering that empathy in the little ones that you're around as well.
Yeah. If you like this episode, please let us know. We would love to hear from you. Give us a comment, a great review. Make sure, if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button so that you are the first to know when new episodes arrive. You can email us at whomadethismesspod@gmail.com, and we are also on Instagram.
Yeah, you can find me at The Nerdy Nurturer.
And I am at Robinson right now.
And then you can find us on Who Made This Mess podcast. We're so glad you joined us today.
Thank you.
Bye.